Yeah, it was funny to watch that family photograph moment where the president took questions in a way world leaders often don't. And the big question, of course, was why is this happening? Why is he leaving? And he was insistent that he has to get back to Washington to deal with what's going on in the Middle East and give a whole lot of color. But I was watching the world leaders next to him, including Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, who seemed understanding of the president's decision to do this. There was praise from President Trump of Prime Minister Carney, of the way that this summit unfolded on that first day, of the conversations that the two of them had and that President Trump had with other world leaders. But we know well, Tom, this is a president who is ill at ease, shall we say, outside the confines of where he lives. He likes to be at the White House or at his club, Mar-a-Lago. So we know that on past trips, there's been a level of discomfort. Perhaps that was manifest here. But the open question, of course, is where do we go from here in terms of this conflict, and what does the White House's engagement look like?
In the first term, we had an understanding of the security Pentagon apparatus of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I'm just going to pick on General McMaster as one name. Identified David Gura the body language around the multi-jobbed Secretary Rubio?
It's a great question, and one of those multi-jobs, in addition to being the United States' archivist, he's also the president's national security advisor, and there's no movement underway that we can detect to kind of replace him from that position. So he's there on an interim basis, but there's no one waiting in the wings to kind of to sweep in. So he has those two jobs in this kind of Kissingerian way. He was here with the president at the G7 summit. What we heard about him going back to Washington is he wanted to have a meeting with his national security advisor. So there are people on whom he relies. It's a smaller team, but the principles are, yes, of course, Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, and many other things. And then, of course, Steve Witkoff, the president's longtime friend who's played this role now of trusted deal maker for the president, doing these negotiations when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine and, of course, the conflict in the Middle East as well.
Do we know, David, what the next moves may be coming from this White House? President Trump suggesting that there might be something fundamental as of today, perhaps.
So he left here, stuck around for that photo, had dinner, got on Air Force One, and that afforded him the opportunity to post on social media, which he did. And he really pushed back on something that the French president suggested as world leaders were kind of coming to terms with what was going on here. President Macron said, maybe this is a good sign. Maybe the president's going to be a deal maker here and open up this kind of temporary peace between Israel and Iran, a ceasefire in which they could engage in more direct diplomacy. The president really pushed back on that in a social media post late last night in the early morning hours. He said he wants this to be over completely. He wants a complete deal. He doesn't want a temporary ceasefire. So I think what we're watching for in Washington today is some indication from the president of what those next steps are. Again, if it's a diplomatic step forward or if it's one that's military.